Hello, this is Jon Speelman with the video and audio. I've been having a fuss pot with the audio just now. Version of this fortnight's column, and it's called Raising the Floor. It's about the World Championship match. I'm excited that the candidates has ended. Obviously, we'll have 7 months now until the guys actually play. I suppose it probably will be in Dubai in November as advertised. November as advertised, but you never quite know. And okay, it's going to be Nepomniachtchi and Carlsen, whatever happens. So what I did was I made myself a database, as you do, of the 70. I had 71 of their 72 games. I was actually missing the first game they played in the European under-12s, but I picked it up from somewhere else. So I have a 72 game database of the boys, and they've playing each other since 2002 when they played twice. I think in the under 12 European and the under 12 Worlds. Nepo won in the European. This, of course, was at a classical time limit, though they were sprogs. And they drew in the World, and Nepo won both of them. And a year later, they played in the World under 14s, and Sergei Zhigalko won. But Nepo beat Carlsen again to go to 2-0 at that point with a draw. So they've now played, I believe, I said he beat him the first time they played as adults as well. So they've now played 72 times, I believe, of which 11 were at classical chess. Nepo is 4-1 with 6 draws, or if you discount the games when they were sproglets, 2-1 with 6 draws, or 5 draws maybe. And the interesting thing, so I've been watching some, I'm just going to check this is recording because otherwise it's ridiculous, and it is. The interesting thing that they've both been giving interviews. I watched some of the interviews, and Nepo was asked just after he got through, what did he do in the penultimate round? Did he draw with somebody? I've forgotten. I know that Geary lost at that point, and so it was a point difference. And he said, well, I've sent a message anyway. And it was a bilingual interview in Russian and English. I mentioned it there. And then he lost to Ding Liren the next day. He lost awfully, but I mean, what do you expect? The guy presumably partied a bit the night after qualifying to play Carlsen, and even if he hadn't very much, he was either still drenched in adrenaline or running on empty. He can't have been anything much in between. And Ding said that he thought that the important thing was what sort of positions they managed to impose on each other. He didn't. I'm paraphrasing slightly. And Nepo said, well, I suppose these matches, the champion's the favourite, but it's about 50-50. I don't think his odds are as good as that, but I don't think they're that terrible. Carlsen was interviewed somewhere. I think it was just before Nepo was absolutely confirmed as the challenger. And he said, well, we've played some training games, and when the guy's in shape, then it's about 50-50, or maybe he even shades it. But when he's out of form, then I slaughter him. And he said something about winning 7 or 8 games in a row. So Nepo's obviously a very emotional guy. I pointed out that chess players, even very strong grandmasters, are emotional. It's just that amateurs don't notice it when they play them. Well, they do now because of the engines, but they didn't previously. And that I thought that the most important thing for Nepo, and David Howe picked this up during this interview, he was also somewhere on one of the screens, is that basically Nepo has to raise his floor. He doesn't have to raise his ceiling very much, because he's perfectly capable of beating Carlsen on a good day. Perhaps a slightly bad day for Carlsen, but what he does have to do is not to have too many bad days. Or whatever he does on the good days, they won't matter very much. Then I talked about it's interesting that Black actually has a plus score in these 72 games. I think it's 18-17. And I said, okay, they're going to get ready. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. And that I had to get rid of that nail. And that they cast. Of course, they've also got to. I'm correcting typos. I make so many typos when I type. That they have to carry on their normal chess life, and actually, Carlsen, when this gets posted, it's quite possible that Magnus will be playing. He'll be playing Nakamura in the final of the New Chess Challenge, or whatever it's called, New Chess Classic. And okay, the preparation's a big deal, and Carlsen's done it for big World Championship matches before. Nepo hasn't, but he's a very bright guy. He will obviously, he'll do what he can. And then I assembled some games, and the really interesting thing I found, I assembled 6 games, and then when I looked at them, every single one Black had won. So it is true that they're very much counter-attackers against each other. And okay, we should get onto the games. They're in this column 145.pgn, and I'm not going to say too much about them, just go through quickly. So this was the first classical game they played after they were kids. And it was a Sicilian where Carlsen got outplayed, really. And then nearly managed to be okay, and then it went wrong again. So here Nepo is just saying, well, are you going to take a draw? But he doesn't, which is all very creditable. So basically, Black has a diagonal now. He's got this diagonal. I don't know, can I do an alt in that and do that or something? That's the whole point of his play. And he went knight h4, bishop f3. I mean, I haven't analysed this very carefully. And now he thought he was going to have a big discovery against the queen, but this beautiful move. Lovely white square move. There are a lot of white square moves in this game. Prepares rook a4 and gets off the diagonal. Carlsen couldn't take, I think, because of rook to a4 takes e4, which presumably maybe bishop takes, just rook takes, leads to Ragnarok, more or less. I suppose I should give that line. Pawn takes, rook to there. Is there any way to play this position? I'll ask the engine. Perhaps you have to play queen takes rook. Queen takes a4 is the best you can do, so queen d2, bishop takes, check, splat, into here, check. Okay, I mean that's the sort of thing that can happen on the white squares. Carlsen managed to defend himself more or less, but that's a nice move. And all these white square things happened. This was a very good move, getting out of the way and just saying I can't actually attack, so I'm going to go backwards. I thought it was a very impressive move. And they hacked away. And in practice, even if this position is perfectly defensible for white, in practice it's disgusting, because Black is attacking with 3 good attacking pieces. And also the dark squared bishop does not, of course, defend the light squares. They played some moves. At some point Magnus tried to bail out like this. And Nepo has very good technique, actually. Very good technique. He managed to get to this position. Still had to fight. Big fight. I mean, your man is really battling very hard. Don't know if you can play king h5 there, or does something happen? Okay, he went there and there. And eventually they swapped the queens and he won. So that was the first classical game they played as adults. And Nepomniachtchi won. Then I've got, this is the second one, I think. Carlsen didn't win to the third. So this was annotated by Alex Baborin for Chess Today, which I haven't seen any copies of for a long time. Maybe he's sending it to my old Demon address. Maybe I never changed addresses. That's possible, actually. There's a great pile of them somewhere. Or in my Gmail account. It hadn't occurred to me. Because when I had to change addresses a couple of years ago, I changed everything under the sun, but probably not that. Or possibly not that. Okay, they're playing chess. But Borin made the point that he thought Carlsen didn't often play IQP positions, and he said he thought Kramnik, at the time was still a professional chess player of course, was the world's best player at playing IQPs. Interesting. They played some moves. Rook e8 is to prepare bishop h6, pawn takes, queen takes, bishop f8. Because if you had to play rook e8 and white got a knight g5, it might work. If white had an extra tempo. They played some moves, and it is very complicated. He's got the bishop, but now white's got dark square stuff happening. Somewhere around about here, Alex said, oh, well, basically Magnus talked himself out of bishop h6, which he obviously saw and thought about. Bishop h6, you have to play bishop c3, because if you do it this way, then this is a disaster. Here you're really splatting through as white, and it clearly is going to be catastrophe totale. I think it's fairly clear it is. But splat. Horrible, horrible position. Probably losing about 50 pieces. Have to watch out for the back rank, but it's not difficult to do. I mean, queen c6, you can play rook d. Well, you can play queen f7 and probably make the guy in a couple more moves. It's disgusting. And bishop e6, you just go back to d1 if you're worried about your back rank. Don't have to, obviously. Okay, so bishop c3 takes, check. I think he'd have been most worried actually about king f8, though the engine doesn't like it. King here, knight takes here, check here. This is a pretty clean line. White gets the exchange. That's not too difficult, I don't think. You could manage that in a game without too much trouble. And you got the advantage, so there is a passed a pawn still. I think it's harder to calculate when apparently rook d3 is just winning. I mean, engines go ping, you're lost, comrade, and that's not obvious to anybody. Well, it isn't obvious to me anyway, is all I can say. I mean, in a game, I think I had a jolly good attack, but I wouldn't know if it was enough. You know, he's just playing really slowly, and okay, here he's won the pawn back. The black king is still running around. The queen defends c1, which is rather important, because otherwise queen takes knight would work. But okay, this is a computer line, really. They played these moves. It was all fine. I think they said they should have gone to bishop g6. And I think I'd say maybe better in theory, but in practice. Practice, you really want to keep your pawns intact. Okay, and it's alleged that g5 is really quite strong now. Not obvious to me anyway. Bishop f5, queen g3, knight h5, there's this line. And that's a great move. I mean, without it, maybe it wouldn't be that much. Obviously, you take it even if you can't. And that apparently wins, I think. I don't know if queen b7, yeah, it's queen b7 or d7. Okay, so I presume, yeah. Okay, but that's quite difficult. I mean, you know, you see those moves, but do you work them out? He should have gone c5 and had a decent position. And obviously when he went, he intended to go c5, but he just missed this. This was his intention. His whole shtick was to play queen c6 now. He would never have gone into it if he thought he had to go pawn takes knight. But now he'd missed this one. But white can fight indeed. Shall I? The white can fight. However, Queen c6 has presumably been Carlsen's whole point. I don't know how. I can't remember how much they were in time trouble in this game. And they ended up with Nepo after Queen a4. Carlsen was gone, and he managed to fight a little bit, but not much. He didn't really fight. He gave up now. So that was quite a big game. And then we had another one, Carlsen winning as black. Every game, as I said, is a win for black, which is rather amazing. It shows how well matched they are, I think. This was one where Nepo seemed to have rather a nice position, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a squish. But somehow Carlsen managed to fight, and at some point Nepo started trying to bail out, I think. That's a very good move, destabilising the position. I mean, it's now a complete mess. And I don't know if he had to do, but he did. F5 is a very good move. Should have played E takes. I mean, very, very tough. Switching from being clearly better to being in great danger is very difficult to do. And he took, which loses. It appears that he could take the other way, and there are these checks. The king hides. It looks disgusting, but then you play Queen a7 and you get back and you're all right. So, well, okay. I believe the engine, but I don't think it's Queen g1 is the only move, of course. And surprisingly, white is defending, and he still has his bishop and d5. And the great and glorious engines say that white is slightly better here. But it still looks scary even now, actually, of course. It's definitely not a position you'd be comfortable in, even if you are better. And he took this way, and after g4, g takes and g4, then, right, I mean, you can't defend in both directions at once. I don't know if he could have done a little bit better. I didn't even look, I knew it. If rook h1, what do? You'd probably go check and take and queen g5 or something, and you just end up getting in. And white can't defend himself. Alright. And I gave some very silly line. King takes, queen takes. Followed by queen takes rook. So that was Carlsen winning his first classical game. His only classical game. And then I've given 3 games from the last time these guys met, which was in the Carlsen Invitational. And they're rapid play games and one's a blitz game, but I think they're indicative in some places. So this one, okay, and I did see it was form rather than from, but I'm trying not to be too anal about this. Okay, they played their moves, and very good position to get for Nepo in these circumstances, even if white is a bit better. And okay, I mean, it's difficult. It's a dangerous position. Now, he should have gone queen e6, which is not easy to realise, but the point is that when you do this, after knight f4 or something, you have d5, and that gives you a huge tempo. For instance, this position, knight d4, and black gets kicked back, and it all works out okay for white. Which even here isn't very obvious. I mean, okay, I'll believe it, but you have to think about it a bit to know that that's true. And what happened was he got a very decent position to play. Then at some point, I don't know if bishop c3 was a bit of a mistake. Did he need to play bishop c3 there? Queen d1. Better idea. Okay, and then knight f4 happened. Of course, Nepo took his chance. Rook g4, and now it's really dangerous. I mean, even if he managed, I mean, he perhaps thought he was okay here. That's a very good move, tucking the king away. I was thinking about other things, but this is a much better square for it. Nice white square for it. Notice we've got another white square game here, which is interesting, perhaps. Excellent move, and now white gets kicked back. Yeah. And Nepo was very, very calm. No dramatics at all. Got his king up. Okay, and he won. So that was actually a must-win game at the end of the first day in order to draw that day. Then Carlsen got a game he won where he had to win. And this one is a dart square game. No, I tend to classify games. Carlsen just about, well, he's, I mean, even this, even if engines like this for white, it's much easier to play for black, because what white has to prove something. If white doesn't prove something, then black has dart squares, quite nice dart squares. They fought very hard. Carlsen got the advantage. Then it all went pear-shaped a bit. E5, really good. I mean, he's really played very well, Nepo, to fight back. Carlsen took. And then he had a long think and realised that he'd have to play sacrifice a piece. But I mean, you know, they both do whatever they have to in these games. Apparently G4, King F7 maybe is King F7 better? I'm not sure. You know, you could analyse for ages and not know. F7, slam. Slam. Okay, so, and the critical moment was that here he played King H4, Bishop F3, rook to there, check here would have drawn, because you basically can't. The white king's threatening to hide, and you can't win more than a certain amount for those pawns. Well, the bishop basically. What happened was that now he was able to win more than that, and then he won. So that was that one. So Carlsen also won another one after that, and then they went to Blitz. And I mentioned that in the first Blitz game they'd had this ludicrous thing that Carlsen played really well, got rook and knight against rook, and then made a mouse slip, and then had to defend after 40 moves of playing with rook and knight. Had to defend with 40 moves of playing with knight against rook. I mean, online chess is great, but it does have its faults as well. This was the second Blitz game. Carlsen got the advantage, but Nepo fought hard. I mean, I'm not going to try to... Well, the point I want to make is that... I mean, that's not a very happy move, but maybe necessary. Is that Nepo defended himself very sensibly. They got to this position, which is pretty unpleasant actually for black, or it looks as though it should be. And they went round and round in circles. Of course, you can't take as a rook c1 check. I should, I suppose, point that out. 2 question marks. Rook c1 check. And on they went, and Carlsen went round and round, got a bit frustrated, and then decided to play this ending. If you're going to, and I mean, he could have gone King G1 still, presumably. Queen D8's a good move, and now suddenly the B pawn is a real force. I mean, the engines don't think that much of it yet, but it's not fun, not at all fun. This position for. I don't know if he could have played King F3 still. Could he still made a draw? King F3. King F3, maybe. I mean, I think Magnus was trying to win this for a long time. Now he realised he really should try to make a draw, but it's a bit late. So it turns out in this position, that you can take on d5, which is completely... I mean, you'd have no idea during a game. Obviously, the guy's giving checks. And it just turns out that you can arrange it that when he goes there, you play queen a2 check. Queen a3 check might be okay as well, I suppose. And this turns out to be a draw. But, I mean, who knew? I mean, certainly it's not something you could be remotely confident about as white. And so Carlsen went h4, and he later lost. Now, the interesting thing about this, it's a blitz game. Okay, it's quite a lot of prestige and money and stuff, but basically the interesting thing is that Nepo, having survived... Okay, it's different in a blitz game, actually, than in a normal game. He has good technique, and he beat the guy fairly easily. I mean, queen a6 check, I presume was deliberate, and I think if you did that on a chessboard, that would be a little rude. I don't think it is over the internet, because the etiquette is different. You know, I mean, people play on these ridiculous things on the servers with, you know, rook against rook and things, which gives me conniptions. But it's the way the boys do it now, to some extent. Anyway, queen a6, queen takes queen, resigned. So, basically, going to be a very interesting match. Much will depend on whether Nepomniachtchi, well, first how his preparation goes compared to Carlsen, and then whether he can keep himself from having bad days. I don't know if people won't remember, but I do. The first game of the Botvinnik-Petrosian match in '63, Petrosian played like about a 2100 player. Probably Kasparov, when he said, oh, the two guys who lost to Nepo in the second half both played about 2100, he was possibly echoing that comment. Petrosian himself said, I played about 2100, but of course he went on to win the World Championship. And so there are going to be days, especially near the beginning, or until he gets comfortable, where Nepo is going to have a problem. I mean, I would say that Carlsen's job would be to make him uncomfortable as quickly as possible, because basically if they have a level match, then he's playing an opponent who's his equal, I think, which I guess was the same with Caruana. On the other hand, if they do end up n-all, I assume, or half n-all, I suppose n is 12, is it, and half n is 6, I don't know. It's another 12-game match is what I'm saying. Then I guess Carlsen would be quite a reasonable favourite in rapid play, maybe as much as against Caruana. Anyway, I've said maybe 60-40, maybe 55-45, but I don't think it's sort of much more than that. I think he's a really worthy opponent, and I'm looking forward to seeing them bash each other's heads. Cheers then, I'm going to stop now.